This episode of Brains on Games is about a trick-taking game that's also a tableau builder. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we are going to talk about a game that's really two games in one. It's a game with an evolution theme that combines trick-taking with tableau building. A game that was sent to me not too long ago by the folks at Dragon Dawn Publishing. It's a game called Darwinning. And maybe you know that I'm going to enjoy a game that has a pun in its title. But this is a game that can be played with between 2 and 6 players. You can play a game in somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. And it's suitable for kids aged 9 and up. Let's take a look at Darwinning. At the beginning of a game of Darwinning, each player is going to randomly get a player board that has their creature on it. The creatures might have some abilities, or there's lots of information on here that I'll talk about. There's all different kinds of creatures, from amoebas to fish to birds to elephants, and there's even a dinosaur. And some of them, I didn't notice this when I first opened the box, and we've played a couple of games before I realized some of the player boards have little poems on the back about the creature that's on the front of the board. These boards have some information about the creature that you're going to be playing. At the top here, it explains where you're going to begin on the food chain. That's this circular counter here that's going to be in the middle of the table. Each player is going to have a little token, and if you put them all together, they spell Darwin. But one player here is going to be on the number 1, and the other player is going to start on the number 5. And that has some impact on some things that you can do later on in the game. Players are also going to start with a certain number of population counters, these little eggs right here. And in the case of the amoeba, they start with 9 of these tokens, and the fish is going to start with 7. Those are going to change through the game as you build your tableau, and we start to determine how much food is available on any particular turn. On the left-hand side of the player board, you're going to see some icons of environments with some food icons underneath them. At the beginning of a game of Darwinning, you're going to deal out 5 of these cards that have environments on them. And if your player card matches up with those environments, you're going to get some food, which is also going to help with population maintenance or population growth, and with your species survival. So you start with 5 of those. The game is typically played out, although there are rules for longer games, it's typically played out over 3 eras. So you'll start with 5 of those environments face up on the board. The next round there's only 4, and then there's only 3 in the third round of the game. So you're gradually shrinking the number of environments where players will be able to gather food for their species. At the bottom of the player boards are some spaces for traits. Each species can have up to 5, and at the beginning of the game they might start with 1 or 2. Here you've got metamorphosis and mutation for the amoeba, and this one here only has mutations. That's an ability that allows you to steal a trait from another species, so both species will be mutating if you use that ability during your turn. That is the tableau building element of this game. You'll be improving your traits or changing the traits of your species. You'll be adding to your population, hopefully, and not subtracting from it. You'll be increasing your standing on the food chain or increasing the number of environments where you can gather food from. But that's really for the second phase of the game, because the first phase, the first part of each era, is the trick-taking phase. And that means that you're going to have, each player will have a hand of 10 of these cards, and the cards are divided up into 3 suits. There's blue berries, there's pink flowers, and brown acorns. Here is what those cards look like. You can see they sort of look like the traits that are down at the bottom, and you can use those to improve your traits, but I'll tell you how that works. You've got the suit up here at the top and the number, and you're starting with those 10 cards, and each round the players are going to play cards in order to hopefully have the best hand of cards played in order to win that trick. It's not a game where you have trump suits like some games like Hearts, but it is a game where you're playing combinations of cards. I think that makes it interesting. You're winning by poker hands. Now, if there's a tie, if 2 players play 3 of a kind, then you just add up the total, the sum of the numbers on those cards that they played, and the player with the highest sum wins. But you're going from the most powerful hand being four of a kind, and then a straight flush down to the least powerful, which would just be a single high card, or a pair of cards would be the least powerful ones. So you're playing multiple cards in order to win the tricks, and the era ends and you move on to the next phase when one player runs out of cards in their hand. It's a real balance between maybe hanging on to some cards versus, using up your cards to end the hand as quickly as possible. Once the era ends, once one player runs out of cards, you move on to the survival phase, and I'll explain what that is. But each time you play those tricks, the winner of the trick is going to take all the cards, and then they can take one of the cards they played and use that card to improve their species. So in the case of a card like this, if I had played maybe three of a kind with sevens, I could take this card which says food storage on it. It's a picture of a refrigerator. And I could add that to my tableau down here, and when it gets to the survival phase, because my species now has like a camel hump or something like that, I've got 3 extra food that are going to be added to the total food that I can access during the game. The majority of those cards, as you can see, the majority of the cards are taken up by that picture that goes with the trait. There's a little number in the corner and a little suit in the corner, and then there's the trait and a little icon for the trait at the bottom. But you can use these cards in multiple ways. One way might be to just play it as a trait and improve your species like that. Another is that you can see on this one that there's a desert hex, and that would mean if I played it over here, I'd play it underneath my player board rather than on top, so I can still see these other icons. But this would mean that during the survival phase, when I'm checking to make sure I have enough food to maintain my population, I could gather 2 food from a desert hex if that's one of the face-up environment cards during that era. I can also use it, you see that there's an egg here as well. I could use it to increase the population of my species, and I would add an extra little egg here to my tableau. And that'll mean that I'll need some more food, but it also will earn me some points at the end of the game if my population is increased beyond that initial number of 9 in this case. So this is a pretty big population to start with. The final way that you can use these cards is that some of them have a little dinner plate at the top with a plus on it. And I'll put it down here so you can see this one has a +2, and this would allow you, rather than using it as a population or to gather food or as a trait, you'd put it up here at the top underneath your tableau, and that would mean that you'd be moving your token further up on the food chain, which is important both for points, because you'll get points for whatever number you're at here at the end of the game, but also because players who are higher on the food chain can eat the creatures that are below them, and that will eventually reduce their population. So you might want to make sure that you're moving farther along here as much as you can. If you're starting as a small creature below 5, when you increase your standing on that chart, you move 1 extra space. As you play through those hands, you're trying to win as many tricks as possible, but the last hand is the one where a player runs out of cards. When a player plays that last card, that's the final hand of that era, and for the final hand, it's the losing player, the weakest hand, that's going to not win the trick. They've lost the trick, but they get to play their card to improve their species. So if I play a pair or 3 of a kind and that's the losing hand, I get to choose one of those cards and increase my population or my standing on the food chain, or add an extra trait to my tableau. Once you've played that final hand and hopefully everybody's had a chance to improve their species in some way, you move into the survival phase of your turn. And that's when you check to see if you have enough food to maintain your population, or hopefully even to grow that population. For the fish here, who started with a population of 7, they're going to take a look. They get 3 food from the swampy environment and 3 from the water. So they're only going to get 3, but we did play that food storage card earlier, so that means that they've got a total of 6 food. Unless they have another environment where they can gather food from, they're going to lose a population. If there's excess food, you gain a population, so more food than your population needs, then you'll gain 1. If it's equal, nothing happens, but if there's not enough food to sustain your population, you lose 1 of these tokens. Now there's one other way that you can get food. The animal that is higher up on the food chain can eat the other one, and that will give them 2 food. They can bite more than one of these of these players if there are multiple players in the game, and then you would put a bite marker on their tableau. So this letter A, the fish, is higher up on the food chain than the amoeba, and if the fish is going to eat that creature, then you'll get a bite token here. The amoeba will lose a population if they get 2 of these bite tokens. Then the population goes down by 1, and you get rid of these things and you start again for the next round. So you can gain 1 population if there's excess food. You can lose a maximum of 2 population if there's not enough food and somebody bites you enough for you to go down by 1. Any other bites after that don't affect your population. They do still give the other players some food though. And then you proceed to set up the next round. You shuffle up the environment cards again, and next time you're only dealing out 4. And then for the third era, you only deal out 3, like I said earlier. So that's shrinking, but hopefully your species is improving enough that they'll be able to gather enough food. I've set things up where there's only 2 tableaus here and only 2 players, but for a 2-player game you play an extra dummy hand, so I would say the game does play better with 3 or more, because otherwise you've got this extra set of cards that you have to work with. And I won't go into detail about that aspect of the game, but when you've got 3 or more players, you're really jockeying for position here, and it becomes more complicated to win those hands and manage the number of cards that you have remaining to make sure that you don't get caught out and win the last trick, and therefore not be able to improve your species in that last hand of each era. Once you've played the third era, you take a look at the cards in your tableau, and that's going to earn you some victory points. You earn a point for the number that you're at on the food chain. You earn points for your population, especially if it's above your initial population. So if you've managed to grow, you're going to get some extra points for that. You earn points for your traits. And you earn extra points if the numbers on the card are higher numbers. So you earn points for the environments where you can get food from. There's lots of ways that you're going to earn points at the end. So you're going to be doing a bit of mental math, but that combination of the trick taking, where you're doing working memory to make those calculations and figure out how to budget those cards, and then when you're doing that survival phase, it becomes more of a budgeting, an executive functioning exercise where you're planning ahead. Where do I need to make those improvements? I can see those environments. I need to win some hands and add some extra environments to make sure I have enough food at the end. So you've got executive functioning, planning ahead, and tackling things in an organized way, adjusting your problem-solving approach based on the new parameters that come up in each era of this game. And you've got that memory component where you're working with juggling lots of information to make sure you can win or lose those tricks and improve your species in that way. And that is Darwinning in a nutshell. A game that's actually 2 games, trick-taking plus tableau building, and it's a game that requires that ability to plan ahead and to juggle some information in your memory. I'll try and find a new article, because I know I've already posted some articles about executive functioning and working memory skills, but I'll try and find something new and I'll post it in the notes below the show. But if you have any questions or comments for me, you can add them to the comment section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and previous episodes are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.